guys can see my screen, please put a thumbs up so that I know. Okay, so you guys can see my screen. Okay, thank you so much for your feedback. I really appreciate it. So just to start off, I think I'm gonna start it off with like a bit about my journey, so that you have some sort of context and hopefully some of your questions also get answered in the process. So I did my BA in psychology at UJ from 2018 to 2020, and then I did my BA honors in psychology at UNISA. And then I did my master's at Wits. So I didn't have a teaching qualification or I didn't work as a teacher prior to me being accepted for my master's because I saw a lot of those questions if you must have a teaching qualification. So there are some universities that don't require it, but for some universities it is a requirement. And then I got in my master's in educational psychology at Wits, and then it is a 1 year coursework. And then in that 1 year, you're doing practicals, assignments, exams, and then you have to submit your research. You have 2 years to submit your research. And then year two is internship. I did my internship at a school, 𝐿. So this is 12 months. This is a whole year. So in your internship, you do have a chance to finish your research. I ended up submitting my research around March during my internship. And because I had submitted my research earlier and I had done 80% of my internship, I was then able to write my board exams in December, no, in October. And then for the board exams, you need 70% to pass. And then after you pass your board exams, then you register as an independent psychologist. So this is just a bit of context with regards to my journey and how I ended up here. I see Rigatilo has a hand up. Please put a question in the chat box and then we'll have a Q&A at the end, unless if that is like a mistake. Okay, next slide. So just to give you a bit of context in terms of educational psychologists, let me minimize my screen. So just to give you a bit of context in terms of educational psychologists, and I think this is very important when you fill out your applications and when you go for selections, you need to show them that you actually understand what an educational psychologist does in terms of like their scope and like their training and their areas of practice, right? So educational psychologists are trained in assessments, psychotherapy, research, learning, and human development across the lifespan. So this means that you are trained to work with kids and adults throughout, right? So this is psychotherapy assessments and even research, because you also do 50% of your coursework is research. So by the time you graduate, you are competent in some level with research. And their work focuses on supporting emotional well-being, learning, development, and psychological functioning in children, adults, families, and communities. And this is one of the questions that I saw a lot with regards to are you only trained to work with kids? So number one, no, you're not only trained to work with kids, you do work with adults as well. So hopefully some people get answered through that as well. And then in terms of areas of practice, number one, interventions. So there is psychotherapy. So you are trained in different modalities of therapy with adults and kids. So this is psychodynamic, CBT. So there's different modalities depending on the university that you go to, because some are very particular in terms of the training. For example, VETS was very psychodynamic. So a lot of your training in terms of psychotherapy will be focused in psychodynamic. Others are eclectic, meaning that you train in all the modalities that are out there. So that's something that you also need to consider a lot when you apply to universities. You need to check the modality that they focus on. And if you are inclined to a specific modality, then that also then informs the university that you apply to. Then play therapy. Play therapy is for kids. So basically, you learn how to do therapy with kids using toys. So basically, I think we all know that sometimes kids don't know how to verbally express their emotions or their issues. So then we use toys to get a sense of their internal world. And we also use toys to kind of like get them to be able to express the big emotions that they can't articulate verbally. So play therapy is basically that. It's therapy with kids and toys and basically using play as a way of therapy with kids. So you are trained in that. And then we have group and community interventions. So a portion of your training is on community work and group work. So this is group therapy, community interventions. I remember in my training, each group was allocated a community. Mine was it was a community site in Zandspruit, somewhere in Cosmo City. So you would go visit the community every Thursday, and you learn so much about the community. You learn how to work with the community to not necessarily fix, but to come up with solutions that work for them. So you are trained in community work as well. Because remember, as a psychologist, you're not going to be working in isolation. Most of the time, you're going to be working in a community. Then you're also trained in parent guidance and parent-infant psychotherapy. So a big part of your training is also about parenting and psychoeducation. So that's something that you must also be aware of. And then learning support and case management. They also teach you a lot about learning support and how to manage your cases. And then treatment of emotional, behavioral, and psychological difficulties. So this is basically you trained to provide psychotherapy with sorry. Um okay, hold on. I just got a message from Ngobile. It looks like my slides are not moving. Let me quickly fix that. Okay, apologies about that. I think now you can see the slide that I'm on. So I was still saying, areas of practice is treatment to emotional, behavioral, and psychological difficulties. And then on to the next slide. Um, assessments. So a big part of your training is assessments. As an educational psychologist, you do what we call psychoeducational assessment. So what a psychoeducational assessment is, it's basically an assessment that is divided into three parts or four parts. So there's a cognitive part of it. With the cognitive part of it, you get a sense of a child's IQ. Where are they functioning cognitively? So this is almost like an overview of their strength and weaknesses cognitively. For example, you'll be able to see their working memory, their verbal comprehension, their processing speed, and their overall IQ. Then you have a scholastic part of it where you get to see how is their reading, how is their spelling, how is their written expression, and then you also have an emotional part of the assessment. So that just gives you an overview of where the child is emotionally. So that is a psychoeducational assessment. So you are trained on how to do psychoeducational assessments, and normally a psychoeducational assessment then informs an intervention. So this is where now a learner's placement into schools comes into place. So the psychoeducational assessment will tell us, for example, that the child can stay at a mainstream school, or the child can go to remedial school, or the child can go to a more specialized school, or no, the child can stay in a mainstream school, but they need more I don't know, accommodations. So that is what a psychoeducational assessment does. So for a learner to be placed at a remedial school or like a vocational school, you use a psychoeducational assessment, and that is what educational psychologists do. And then you're also trained to do career assessments. For example, with grade 10s when they or grade 9s, when they don't know what careers they want to go into, you as an educational psychologist can do a career assessment, which will then help them decide what to do. And then we have examinations, concessions, and accommodations. So I'm not sure if some of you are aware of this, but if you're on TikTok, I think most of us would have seen the conversation around concessions and accommodations. So basically, after you've done your psychoeducational assessment, you can then look at the result and see if a child needs an accommodation. For example, an accommodation can look like giving a child extra time. So when they're writing exams, they get 5 more extra minutes, or they get a reader. For example, those kids who struggle with reading during their exams, they get someone who read the question paper for them. You also have a scribe. These are people who help the learner to write. For example, when a child is writing an exam, someone will be writing their answers for them. And accommodation can also look like a separate venue. I know there's also like a print enlargement. For example, if they're writing an exam, their question paper must come at a particular what's this font or something like that. So that is what you're looking at with accommodations. You will be trained, especially depending on the internship that you do. If you interning at a school, most of the time you will be involved in this process as well. And then we have medical legal assessments. Educational psychologists also do medical legal assessments, but you must have competency in it, meaning you must be supervised by someone who trained you as well. So that's just an overview in terms of what to expect as an educational psychologist. And then in terms of your environment where you work in, you work everywhere. Some educational psychologists work at schools, some work in the district, some work at universities, some work in hospitals. I've seen hospitals that are employing educational psychologists, some work in NGOs, some work in private practice. That's what most psychologists do as well. So the sky is the limit, honestly, in terms of the what you want to pursue after your training and after your internship. So you can pretty much work everywhere. Um, then the next slide is working in systems. I decided to add this slide here because it's so important for you guys to be aware that if you're going to be working as an educational psychologist, you are going to be working in systems, because remember, a big part of our work is working with kids. Yes, we do work with adults as well, but most of us end up working with kids, especially during internship. So you're going to be working with parents because you need consent. You're going to be working with teachers because most of them are still at school. So you need to be someone who's interested in working in a system environment. This is working with parents, teachers, and communities, or even external primary caregivers, because some kids don't have parents. So you have to work with like extended family members. So it's so important for you to have that skill or that interest in wanting to work in a system. So this is why I decided to add the slide. And a big part of the theories that we use as educational psychologists in training is the ecological perspective. I think we are all somewhat familiar with it from undergrad or honors or somewhere during our training. The systems theory or the ecological theory. This is a theory that informs most of our work as educational psychologists, but it's not the only theory that we use. However, it is the one that is mostly relevant in our field because we work with kids. So, yeah, this is something that you must think about if you're someone who wants to work with one person and deal with that person, or you're someone who wants to work with systems. That's why I decided to add that slide there. And then the next slide will be speaking about universities. When we're talking about universities, there's different universities that offer the course. We have WITS, which is where I trained. I think I gave you a bit of insight of WITS. So basically, the requirements, I saw a question on requirements. Yeah, it's either you have an honors in psychology or you did some sort of teaching qualification. It can either be honors or teaching qualification. I think minimum of 65%. That's the requirement. And then University of Johannesburg. Yeah, they also they prefer someone who has a teaching qualification. I stand to be corrected if it has changed. And it is part-time, so you can do it for over 2 years, whereas with VET it's 1 year. UP, same. I think it's honors or background in teaching or a background in education. And then we also have Stellenbosch University, which offers the course. And then UKZN, the last time I checked, they had discontinued the course for the year. I think they were not taking applications for this year. However, I do know that even with them, you could either have an honors in psychology or a teaching qualification. But yeah, try to go to the different websites because I saw some of them are closing soon. So just to give you a bit of background in terms of which universities offer the course. And then we have, I think this is the question that most people asked. This is the autobiographical motivation or a personal motivation. They call it different things. Most people were not sure how to go about approaching the question. So normally, when you ask a question on this autobiography, they want you to reflect on your experience. And I think where some people struggle is they just explain their experience. For example, they talk about something that they either experienced, like a personal experience or a volunteering experience or a working experience. For example, I worked as a assistant at this school for this long. So they just explain what they did, but they actually don't reflect. This question requires you to reflect. So you need to tell them what you did, for how long you did it, what role did you play, what did you learn from it, and link that to why you want to become an educational psychologist. For example, I decided to just add a case study here where I can reflect on my own. For example, if I was to be given this question, I think I would reflect on my experience as a teacher's assistant at a primary school. So I would mention that I worked as a teacher's assistant at primary school for a year, and my role there was to obviously it was during COVID. I'm not sure if you guys still remember that program. So I was mostly there to just assist teachers, checking children's temperatures, so just following those COVID precautions. However, I then decided to volunteer with the SBST of the school, and my role there was to take minutes in the meetings, calling parents, helping learners who can't read. So they used to have intervention classes. So I would help them read, help them catch up with the work that they couldn't do during school hours. And I would also sit in parent meetings where we would be explaining to the parents the barriers that Elena it's experiencing, or so I basically did those kind of stuff. So in a question like this, I would explain my role, what I did, and then what did I learn from it. For example, I learned how to work in a team. I learned how to communicate. That's another thing. You learn how to communicate professionally. Number two, I was exposed to how things work at a school, like an SBST. When do you escalate a matter from an SBST to a district level? What are the procedures that come into that? I learned how to communicate with teachers, work with parents, and I was also exposed to the different learning barriers that learners experience at school, especially because it was a public school. Then I also reflected on I guess a gap that I saw where we stuck at a school with learners who are struggling, but there's a psychologist in the district who's also just overwhelmed with the amount of work. So then there's a long waiting list. And I reflected on that as well, that's something that I was exposed to. I didn't know that there's long waiting areas, no, long waiting lists for kids to see a psychologist from the district. And I reflected on how disheartening that was because most parents couldn't afford to go to a private psychologist. And I also learned how to work with diverse people from diverse backgrounds. Because at the school we had different kids from different languages and different backgrounds, and I also learned how to come up with an intervention that has that is appropriate for the context. For example, you can't just say to a parent, go get extra classes. You need to look at the context in a sense that can the parent afford extra classes? What are you working with? Can they afford extra classes? What can they afford? What resources do they have? So you look at the context and you understand the context, then you make an intervention that is appropriate for them and that is also feasible for them. So that's something that I also learned, how to come up with appropriate interventions for the family. So, for example, that's how you can go about answering that. And then that then led me to think about educational psychology. Is that a field that I want to be in? Why do I want to be in there? So basically, you have to link it and reflect on it and reflect on how you learned or grew from that whole experience. So I hope that answers some of your questions. But if you still have questions, you can still ask at the end. So this was basically me just summarizing some of the things that I learned, for example, teamwork and collaboration with teachers and SBST teams, exposure to learner support and intervention planning, engagements with parents to ensure a holistic learner development, recognition of diversity and the need for culturally responsive approaches, context appropriate interventions that align with learners' development and social realities. This is very important because in South Africa, we are a very unequal society. And I think also you guys also know about the current socio-economic state of our country. So you need to reflect on those. If you dealing, for example, if they give you a case study, you need to think about that. What resources does the family have, and how can I support them using the resources that they have access to? It doesn't help for you to say you need to go to an optometrist at a private sector, whereas the parents don't even have medical aid, they don't even have money for it. So you need to think of resources, think of NGOs, think of doctors in the community that can offer pro bono assessments. So this is what the whole thing of your interventions need to be appropriate for the context. However, if you're fortunate enough to work with a population that has resources, that's a bonus. But unfortunately, 80% of the time, you're gonna be working with people who don't have medical aid, people who can't afford. So you also need to think about those things when you come up with interventions, when you come up with solutions for the case. So this is just an example of how you can go about writing your autobiography. You need to state what you did and what role you were playing there. What did you learn from it? And link that to you wanting to be an educational psychologist. For example, some people were teachers prior to this. Then you can speak about that and speak about your experience there and how your experience at a school or at a university then made you curious about educational psychology. So I think the gap that I've noticed is that most people don't reflect. They just state what they did, but they don't reflect. And that's what then makes your application stand out, your ability to reflect and explain, I guess. Yeah. And then, yeah, this was quite a difficult one. If someone can help me with a previous or like a current application paper, it would really be helpful. I really struggled to get a lot of them because it looks like a lot of them are now online applications. They're not longer like documents that you can download. So I tried to find one just to make this more, I don't know, practical. So I hope you guys can see because I tried to take a screenshot of it because I couldn't download the document. So basically, this they ask you, please outline any relevant work experience that you've heard. For example, if you've worked in retail, you can say you worked in retail as a shop assistant. If you worked in a library, you can say I worked at a library as a librarian or a book assistant. Or if you worked at a school, then you can say I worked at a school as a teacher, or I worked at a school as a receptionist. I work at I don't know. Anyway, so this is where you outline your experience. And I think most people think you only need an experience in teaching or education. Some people don't have that much experience in education. They just have work experience in general. For example, if you work in corporate, then you can also reflect on that. Say you worked as an assistant or HR. So you outline that. And then if any, your current employment, if you do have, then you also state it there. Then the next question, specify any relevant professional, clinical, or community related training and or experience you have had. And then they put in brackets, for example, volunteer counseling, psychometric training, childcare, youth work, or community work. Please provide full description and indicate where and when you obtain this experience, as well as the duration of your involvement. And I think this goes back to my previous slide where you need to be very specific. Like, what were you doing? When were you doing it? For how long? What was your role there? So, another thing that I think you should try to do is try to highlight the questions and make sure that you answer everything. So, for here, you have to provide what you were doing, the full description, where it was, and when you did this experience, as well as the duration of your involvement, right? So you must make sure that you explain the question or you answer everything they ask you, right? So here, this is where you provide what you did. So for example, if they were to ask me this is where I'd say, I have also I did some SADC training, the lay counseling. So if you also did some sort of training or lay counseling or providing any counseling, because I know some people also do training on how to provide support for people who just did their HIV test or people who just, yeah, any kind of training or containment support that you did, you can also put the experience here. Or if you did any childcare experience, I know some people did like ECD stuff. This is where you can put it here. So this is where you say, I have experience in volunteering at SADC. I was volunteering under the sorry, something popped up on my slide. I was volunteering as a lay counselor at SADC for 6 months, and I was there for 6 months, and I was trained on how to provide basic online lay counseling skills. So this is where you just express or explain those kind of things. And then the next one is describe any research experience you had. If you did do some sort of research experience, this is where you can explain it. But if you don't, then you can just say not applicable. Then the next one is write the story of how you came to apply for MEd program in no more than 7,000 characters. In addition to sufficiently telling us about yourself, the formative experiences that you have that have shaped you and your journey to applying for an educational psychology master's. Please share your professional aspirations and how you imagine the master's program will support you in fulfilling them. So, with a question like this, it's a loaded question. So, what I'd advise you to do is to break it apart, like break it into sections where you need to tell them about yourself. And then the formative experiences that have shaped you. So this can be during your honors, you did volunteering work, or you came across this, or you experienced some mental health issues yourself that also count, or someone else in your family also experienced mental health issues, then that then shaped you or then led you to educational psychology or psychology in general. This is where you express those things and then you reflect on what that experience taught you. So experience then just showed you about how in South Africa we don't have enough psychologists, and you then became curious about it. So you need to reflect on those things. And then there's a last section here where they say, share your professional aspirations. This is actually very similar to the one that we had during my year, where I think I then mentioned how for me, I see myself becoming an educational psychologist. I want to pursue a doctorate degree after that. I want to work in the clinical field, but I'm also very much interested in the academic sector. So then you speak about things that you want to do when you qualify. You want to work for the district, you want to help kids have access to educational psychologists, or whatever your aspirations are. This is where you go all in and you speak about how the training is going to prepare you for that, and how the training is going to be able to provide you with the opportunity to gain all the skills that you need for you to be able to help kids with assessments or therapy, or even being an academic in the space. So this is where you explain those things. And then the research concept note. I saw some questions on this as well. So with the research concept note, some universities ask for it, but others don't ask for it. So number one, check what they're asking for. On the application form, they should say it's either they want your research topic or they want your aims or your objectives. You need to check what are they asking for, because sometimes they don't want you to write a whole proposal. They just want specific things like your areas of interest. So you need to check what the university requires you to do. If they only want you to say a topic or objectives or your aims, that's all you need to give them. You don't have to go all in depth. If they want a theoretical framework, this is where you then say, for example, I'll reflect back on my master's topic. I was looking at teachers' experiences and perceptions of levels of parental involvement in schools around Soweto. So then if they said we need a topic, that's what I'm gonna say. Obviously, it's still gonna change when you find a supervisor, but just give them an overview of what your topic would be. If they want you to have a theoretical framework, this is where you need to look for a theory that you can use. Say, for my proposed study, I'm looking into using the systems theory. I'm looking into using attachment theory. And this is why I think an attachment theory would be appropriate for my study. And then objectives. What are you hoping to find out from this? Why are you doing this research? So if they're only asking for those things, make sure you only give them those things. You don't give them a whole proposal. Number two, each university has a almost like a departmental research focus document. For example, you can just go on Google and say UJ Psychology Department Master's Research Interests. So the document will show you all the lectures there and the topics they are interested in. So you know if you're applying at UJ, you need to see what the people who are going to supervise you are interested in. If you're interested in inclusive education, you need to see do they have any lectures there who are interested in inclusive education. If you're interested in bullying, do they have any supervisors there who are interested in bullying? And if you also don't have a topic, I think it also helps you to kind of see what interests are there and then align yourself with that. But this is very important because this then also plays a role in terms of you finding your research supervisor. It's quite difficult to find a supervisor if there's no one who's interested in your topic. So for every application that you do, if they ask you about research, the first thing you do is you go to the university's website and you look for the people in the psychology department who supervise master students and see what they're interested in and align yourself with that. If there's someone who's interested in a topic that you're also interested in, it also helps to see are they can do they have capacity to supervise. But I don't think you have to worry about this. But if you don't know what you want to to study about for your research and they're asking you about research, I think a greatest tip is to just go to their website and search for whatever topics they have there. I think that always helps and you can align yourself with that. So I hope that helps with the research note. And if you still have more questions about it, you can just put it on the chat. So now I'm going to actually let me stop sharing for now and see if there's something on the chat box because this is all that I prepared for, and then the next slides are the questions that you guys asked. So let me just stop sharing and see if there's anything on the chat. Um, okay, let me just go up. The slides are not visible. Okay. Okay. Okay, I think someone's mic is on. Okay, so someone said UJ did it differently last year. They'd refer one's application to the department, then requested a research concept note. After some time, then they sent a form with questions relating to autobiography and the case study. Okay, let me go down. So yeah, every university is different, and I feel like they're always changing the structures of the applications. So yeah, thank you for so much for sharing. If there's anyone who's interested in applying at UJ, just like a side note. Um, Tendegile, I think your mic is on. Yeah, let me just mute that. Okay. So yeah, there really isn't much questions, so I'm just gonna share you guys' questions that you shared. Let's go. Okay. Um, can you guys see my slides now? I'm sharing the questions that you posted on the RSVP page. Please put a thumbs up if you can see my slides.
We can, but can you please zoom in a bit as well, just so they're clearer?
Okay, let me zoom in. And now is it more clear? Because I took,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. Okay, so the first question is the process and how to write a research proposal application. Yeah, with regards to the process, it's different for every university. Some universities you have to apply to the online system first, and then you do the departmental applications. Some of them are quite short, some are longer, but again, it differs with every university. Like the comment that was on the chat box, it differs with every university, but most of the time it's the online application to the university, then the departmental form. And the departmental forms differ for every university. Some of them require you to have a research paper, others they just ask personal questions. And then after that, there is a selection. Then they send invites for people who are invited to the selection. Then you go for interviews. So some universities, it's a 1 day process, and for other people, it's 2 days. It differs with the institution. And then after that, they start making selections. Then that's how they select people. So selection week, you're looking at interviews, individual interviews or group activities. It differs per university. I know some universities also do almost like a test that you write, but it differs with each university. And then the research part of it, I think we spoke about it. You have to just answer what they want. If they want, for example, if on the if on the requirements they want a research question, objectives, aims, theoretical framework, and a little bit of lit review, that's what you have to give them. If they say they just want your objectives and your aims, that's all you give them. So most of the time they don't really require a full research proposal. What to include in autobiography and to make your application stand out. I think we touched on this a little bit. You have to be reflective. So be reflective, say what you learned from that and link that to how you want to now become a psychologist. So that's the only thing that makes you stand out. But if you just tell them what you did and you don't reflect, I think that then affects your application, because as a psychologist you're required to reflect a lot. You actually reflect most of the time at work. You have to reflect on what they're telling you. And yeah, so you need to reflect to make your application stand out. It's great to have good marks. That then is like, okay, you meet the academic requirements, but when it comes to paper applications or departmental applications, your ability to reflect and how you articulate yourself and how you make them understand how your life experiences and your work experiences have kind of like come together to shape you into wanting to become a psychologist is what makes you stand out. And also, I think some people prefer to use AI now to write their autobiographies. Yeah, I don't know where I stand with that. If you're gonna prompt it with your life experiences and you feel like it's giving you better responses, it's great. But you obviously just need to be cautious of, for example, if you're using AI, it puts unnecessary dashes in between. So just make sure it doesn't look too AI-ish if that's what you're gonna do to prompt it. At least make it sound like when you're reading the application, make it sound like someone is saying this. It's not a robot, because I think AI doesn't really sometimes depict emotions properly. So just be aware of that. How to prepare for selection interviews. Number one, try to find people who have went to selection for those universities. For example, if you're selected at UP, try to find people who went to UP selections the year before, or people who, even if the person didn't go there, most of the time, psychology is a very small field. If I trained at vet, I most probably know people who went to UKZN or people who went to UJ. So I'll probably try to help you find someone who went there. Try to find someone who went to the selection. Ask them what questions they were asked. What did the selection process look like? And most of the time, when they send you an invite, they outline the activities that you guys are going to be doing. For example, they'll tell you we're going to have a group activity, we're going to have an individual interview. So just try to reach out to people who went there. Number two, there is I'm trying to remember his name, Dr. Zebe on YouTube. He posts videos with people who have been to selection, people who made it to the program. His videos are very helpful. I used most of them to prepare me for my selection. So just search Dr. Zebe psychology on YouTube. He literally has interviews with people from I think all universities and all streams, research, ed psych, counseling, neuropsych. His videos were very helpful because he interviews people who went to selection and they tell you what they did at every university. So, number one, find someone who went to the selection process at the university where you are invited. Number two, watch his videos, Dr. Zebe on YouTube. They are very, very, very helpful. And also go through your application. Try to read your applications, because most of the time they ask you questions based on your applications. So try to go through your applications so that you refresh your mind about what you wrote there and you're not shocked most of the time when they ask you questions. So I think that's the best way you can help yourself prepare for selection interviews and selection week. Um, Someone asked about the stages of the application process. Okay, I think we already went through this, but I'll just go through it again. So it's the paper application, and then they select people and invite them for selection. Then you go for selection week, and then they choose the people that they want to train the following year. So that's just the normal steps for most universities that I've heard of. But yeah, things change, but I don't think it would change that much. Um, how can I make my application stand out from the rest, and what is it exactly that institutions look for? I think with regards to making your application stand out, we spoke about your autobiography and your ability to reflect and just, yeah. that part. And then what institutions look for. Honestly, I saw one application where they were saying that they want someone who's open to learning and all of those things. But I think no one really knows what the panel wants. Because if I think about my class also, they select different people. You will have young people and older people, people who worked as teachers, people who didn't have teaching experience. So it's more so like nobody knows what they're looking for, honestly. You just need to hope for the best. I don't think anyone knows what the institutions are looking for, but I think the most basic things that they're looking for is someone who's open to learning. You must show them that you want to be trained and you have an understanding of what you're applying for, and you must be someone who's also aware of the field. For example, you must show that you understand what a psychologist is and you understand the different trainings. For example, they can ask you, okay, you've worked as a something something, why didn't you go for counseling? Why educational psychology in particular? With a question like that, they're trying to see, do you understand the difference between a counseling psychologist and an educational psychologist? So you need to be aware of those things. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Do you need teaching experience to do educational psychology? Yes and no. So like we've already mentioned, some universities require it and other universities don't require the teaching experience or the teaching qualification. So it just depends on the universities that you're applying for. But just because you don't have a teaching qualification or experience in teaching doesn't mean that you're not gonna qualify. You just need to be specific with the university that you apply for and see that they don't require that. How important are one's honors marks and your research thesis marks? I think you just need to meet the minimum requirement, 65%. If you have more marks like 80%, 90%, that's great. But some people have 70%, 65%, and they get in. So they are important in terms of try to get the best marks you can get, obviously. But if as long as you meet the minimum requirement, 65%, other universities require 70%. So it is important for you to meet that minimum requirement. However, you don't need to get like a 90%. Like sometimes you just need 65% and a great autobiography and how you present yourself during selection week. So it is important to meet the minimum requirement, but marks are not everything. Okay, let me just mute Notando. Okay. And then what kind of volunteer experience can we get that is specific to educational? Um, it differs. Some people volunteer at what is this ECD programs, at crash, at schools, university, so any kind of experience. Honestly, it helps you. You just need to know how to reflect on it, and you must just reflect on what you learned. Some people have retail work experience and they reflect on that because for them, they learned how to communicate with people, they learn how to work in a team. So it doesn't really matter what experience you get, but if you can get something at a school, for example, if there's a local school where you stay, you can go volunteer or go shadow someone there, it's great. But it doesn't really have to be one thing in particular. And then how competitive is the program? Unfortunately, the program is very competitive. That's just the sad part about it. For example, some universities take 4 people, some take 12, some take 6. So it is very competitive because if you think about it, undergrad, there's like hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people who are doing psychology. And honors, okay, it does get a bit slimmer, but you're looking at 100 plus or whatever. But if then you think about masters, they're going to take 12 people, 6 people, 5 people. So it is very competitive, but it's very important for you to not let that demotivate you or think, okay, if they're only gonna take 4 people, what are the odds of me getting in? The odds are very high of you getting in because you are you and you're different and you bring something very different from everyone else. You bring your life experiences which make you stand out. You bring your background in terms of the experiences that you have accumulated through life, whether volunteering, working, or personal. That is what makes you different and that is what will make you get in. So it is competitive, but don't let that make you feel like, oh my God, I have nothing to offer. You actually have a lot to offer. So because I understand how that can make you feel a bit demotivated, but trust me, you do stand a chance. Everybody stands a chance. It's just that maybe this year is not your year and next year is gonna be your year, but it is very competitive. And that's just the issue that we have as a country because of I don't know, don't have enough supervisors to supervise people. But yeah, don't let that demotivate you in terms of applying. Um, And then the next one said, what should I expect during and what is the process of interview selection? So with the interview, one-on-one interviews, you can expect them to ask you questions on your application. So for example, I remember they were asking us, okay, I saw you worked here. What did you learn from that? What made you choose educational psychology instead of other other streams? Like, why didn't you go for clinical? Why didn't you go for this one? You need to explain that type of thing. Or they just give you a scenario like, okay, we've seen that you've worked a lot in underprivileged communities. What would happen if you were to work in a more privileged society? How would you handle that? So it's more questions that are aligned with your paper application, which is why I said if you're invited for selection, you need to go through your paper application just to remind yourself of what you wrote there. So that's a individual interview. They're asking you individualized questions based on what you wrote in your application. So make sure you write things that you are comfortable to share with them. Because remember, this is a panel of psychologists. If they bring something up and they see that you're uncomfortable with it, or you get defensive about it, they will pick it up, and that won't work on your advantage. So it's very important to share things that you are comfortable being questioned about. So that's what an individual interview is more so about. And then with the group activity, with us, we were divided into groups of 5 or 6. I think it was 5. And then we are given a case study. For example, child X just lost their dad. They stay with granny. They're experiencing behavioral issues at school. Their academic performance have declined. You guys need to sit and act like you are a group of psychologists. You need to conceptualize the case. What kind of things would you speak about? This is where now the whole group just starts talking. Okay, I would think about the context. When did dad pass away? How was the academic performance before dad passed away? And how has it changed after dad passed away? Also, you need to, so you just bring out different things that you would consider. You would also think about how was the relationship between the child and the father who passed away? How did they handle grief? So you need to just speak about those things. That is the activity that we were given in my year. However, it can be different every year. So here they're trying to see, number one, can you communicate with other people well in a group setting? Because that's the main important thing. Can you work with other people in a group? Because with your masters, because it's a very small group, most of the time, if not 90% of the time, you're gonna be doing group work. So they need to see that you are someone who can engage in a group respectfully. So for example, if you say something that I don't agree with, I don't have to attack you. I can just say, I like what you said, or take picking up from where you said, I don't agree with that. However, I do think this and that. Don't be disrespectful about it. So they're trying to see if someone has a different point of view from you, how do you handle that? Do you just start attacking them, or do you respectfully educate them on where you're coming from? So I think they're trying to see more so like your group communication skills. So that's the group part of it. And if there's a written activity, we didn't do that where I went. So this is why I said it's important to either watch the YouTube videos of the different universities or ask the person who went to the university where you were selected. And then interview and group discussion. Okay, we just answered that. What steps can a prospective applicant take over the next year to strengthen the okay, so I think number one, you need to work on yourself. That's very important. I remember I was also advised to be in therapy, but therapy is expensive, guys. Not everyone can afford it. So instead of going to therapy, I did the I don't know if the program is still there. It was like an online therapy. I think it was the One Life or Lifeline. I don't know, but I managed to do one no, like online sessions, and I reflected on that. Like, okay, because I wanted to get to know myself and also deal with some stuff that I was dealing with at the time. I decided to do the online counseling. Yes, I couldn't afford a psychologist, so I came up with an alternative. So you need to work on yourself, and therapy is the best place to do that. But if you can't afford that, because unfortunately some people don't have medical aid and all these other factors, just try to find a way to work on yourself and work on some of the issues that you might have. For example, it might be an issue where, for example, you get dysregulated very quickly. For example, if something happens now, you have a big reaction to it. That's something that's going to catch up with you when you're doing your program, because you need to learn to be regulated, or you need to learn to deal with some of the traumas that you've dealt with in the past, right? So work on yourself, number one, however that may look like. For other people, that may look like going to therapy, or going towards the spiritual route, whatever that looks like for you. Work on yourself. Number two, try to put yourself out there in terms of if you see someone is in the field that you want to be in, or someone is an ed psych and you want to learn more about it, ask them questions, interact with them. I think that also helps a lot. So watch videos that I told you guys about. That's going to help you a lot with selections and also how to approach the questions that you asked. And then next slide. Um, if you are a UNISA student and currently enrolled for an honors degree, busy with one module, how does one go about applying for master's program for the 2026 program? Okay, I think number one, you need to email the university that you want to apply to. Because I did my honors at UNISA, and on the year where I was doing it, I couldn't apply because I didn't have exam marks. However, if you are short of one module, email the university and inquire, explain the situation, give them context, and ask if you can apply, hoping that by the time they have selections, which is June, July, August, you would have marks for that one module that's missing, or you have enough modules like the other ones that you have, they can just use that for the application. But then towards the end of the year, you can promise them that you will have the marks. Some universities don't require you to be done with your honors, but others do. So I would suggest that you email the university. You'll be shocked. They're actually quite responsive. I also had to email to ask about a few things because I did my honors at UNISA, so I had a few questions. So just try to email the university that you have, either email them or call them, and explain the background, the context, and ask them, can I apply? Would I be considered? That will help you a lot. Does the age play a role in master selection? No, it does not. There's people who get in their masters when they're 21, other people getting when they're 40, 35, 60. So age doesn't matter. It's more so how you present yourself and how you, or how ready they feel you are for the training. Age does not affect her. People get in when they are 20, 21, 22, 23, 40. It really doesn't matter. Age does not affect her. I'm sure if you go to like a class, for example, last year's class, they will tell you that we are someone who was 40, 50, and someone who was 20, 21. So age doesn't matter. They just need you just need to show them that you're mature enough and ready for the training. That's all that matters. And obviously maturity is, you can't really gauge that with age. I would like to know how I can tailor my CV to be related to educational psychology. So I think with this you just need to I don't know how to answer this because I, don't, I okay, they do ask for your CV. I would suggest that you put in the experiences that you feel are relevant to educational psychology, but then even that, I don't think, yeah, any experience is relevant. So I don't know, maybe just put it on AI and prompt it. But yeah, it really doesn't really play a big factor, like how you tailor your CV, honestly, because those are your experiences. Even if you feel like it's insignificant, it is significant because I'm sure you learned a skill or two there. Besides NRF, which bursaries can I apply for? I know of NRF, and I also know some universities have postgrad merit bursaries. So those are bursaries that are, you get it if your average is over 75 or something. So what I would suggest you do is you go to the university's portal and you check the bursaries that they have for the university. I think that will help you a lot because each university has their own thing. And I think because of how competitive and how discouraging it is when you're applying for your masters, people often forget to apply for funding, and then you get in and then you don't have funding. So in as much as you're applying for your masters, I would suggest that you also just apply for funding. The worst case scenario is getting in and then now you have financial stress. So just try to apply for all the different fundings that are there. Go to each university's website and see which funding they have. Most of them close, I think, late July. So you guys still have time to apply for funding. So just go to the university's website and say UJ Masters funding. It should show you all the applications or all the opportunities of finding they have there, and then just take it from there. But personally, I just know of NRF and postgrad merit awards, which each university has. This is the one that they award you if your marks are 75 or 70, depending on the university. But if you guys know of any other funding, please post it on the chat box. uh the process of applying for masters, what are the expectations? Does it need me to quit my job so I can focus on it? So if you're gonna go to UP, and no, Wits and UKZN, and I think Stellenbosch, you would have to leave your job because it is full time, so you can't really have work and go to classes. So yeah, that's something that you I'm sorry about that. So with Wits, Stellenbosch and UP, and UKZN, it's full time, so you can't work. Unfortunately, you have to leave your job. And that's something that you kind of need to plan for in advance in terms of how you're gonna finance that year. I think UJ, other people do it part time and they get to work as well. So yeah, unfortunately, most of the programs are very demanding. You won't have time for work. Yeah, unless if you're doing something online, but also I'm just thinking about capacity. I don't know if you would have capacity for that. Um, yeah, so that is the expectation. Most of the time, you have to quit your job for a year. And I remember this was something that they asked me about during my selection process. They were like, how are you preparing? Should you get in? How have you been preparing to for the journey? And I spoke to them about how, no, I've prepared my family about how for the year I'm not gonna be able to work. And I've also started saving and yeah, I'll be applying for funding and I'll be staying at home. Just yeah, sometimes they do ask those questions. So yeah, I had to be like, I've applied for funding and I'm gonna be staying at home and I've prepared for my family so that they can support me through that because not having a job for a year can be quite strenuous on you and your family. So these are the things that you need to think about in advance. Questions asked in the selection process. Sure, mine was a while ago. Yeah, they asked me about how have you prepared for the program. This is where you speak about, no, I've spoken to my family and they have an understanding of how the whole thing is gonna go. Number two, they also asked me why vets in particular. Why didn't you apply at other universities? Obviously, for me, I only had an honors in psychology, so I also had to be direct about that. Like, this is the one of the few universities where I meet the requirements. However, you also need to look at other things. Like for me, realistically, I stay in Joburg. Vet was more realistic. So I had to bring that factor in. Like, if I do get in, I'm not gonna struggle in terms of looking for accommodation. And another thing is they're very psychodynamic, and I wanted to be trained in a psychodynamic modality. So you need to also look at those things, like what does the university specialize in, or what kind of training do they or modality are they into? And you also need to show that you've researched about the university. This is why you want to do it here. So they can ask you why this university in particular, and they can also ask you, okay, what kind of internship sites do you see yourself going into? Those are some of the questions that they might ask. But yeah, mostly it is your paper application. We noticed that you told us about this. Tell us more about it. Oh, you mentioned that you went through a depressive episode, for example, or you or someone in your family experienced this. What did you learn from that? How do you think that's going to affect you as a psychologist? Or they can ask you about something like your age or your race or your background. How do you think that's going to affect you being a psychologist? So they can ask you questions like that. It differs. And then what can you do as an honors student to strengthen your master's application? I think what we spoke about in terms of trying to get as much work experience or volunteering experience that's out there, so that you can be able to reflect on that and also just doing your research in terms of what you wanna specialize in. So I think that's what you can do, and also try to get decent marks for your honors so that you can qualify for the 65% minimum. And I think also for funding, it also helps when you have a good mark. It makes it easier for you to get funding. Even if it's partial funding, it also does go a long way. Um, and then the next one, how can one go about securing proper references? Um, if you were like me and you went to UNISA and you didn't really have a lot of one-on-one relationship with the lectures, you can always go back to your undergrad if that's an opportunity for you. However, if it's not, I ended up having to use people that worked at the school where I was volunteering and working. I used one reference from there. I then used another reference. I think it was from the volunteering stuff that I had done. If you can't, then just get people to mentor you and have them be your references, especially if getting someone that you worked with is impossible. And I think also when you put someone as a reference, it must be someone that you trust. You trust that they know your character and you trust that they will say not necessarily good things, but they can speak. well about your character, the good and the bad. So if you can't get an academic one, get someone to mentor you who's in the field, or get someone that you've worked with. This is someone that you trust from wherever you've worked. Get them to be a reference as well. So yeah, I think those are the ways that you can go about getting a reference. If you can't get an academic one or like a lecturer, just try to get someone in the field who can mentor you for a few months, and then that should be enough time for them to reflect on your character and your, I guess, your qualities so that they can be able to answer the questions that they will be asked. But yeah, that's one way of going about it. Okay, that one we've spoken about it. Tips to getting a topic. I'm assuming this is a research topic. I think if you don't have any idea of what topic you want, just go to the university's portal, not portal, the university's research document that we spoke about earlier on, where it shows you which lectures are interested in what. Just go through the list and hopefully something stands out for you. But if not, just try to think of what you're passionate about or something that you wouldn't mind being committed to for the next 2 years. For example, when I was volunteering at the school, as I mentioned, a big part of what I was doing with the SBST was calling parents, taking meetings in taking minutes in meetings. So after that, I was like, you know what? I was actually interested in parental involvement because that's something that we really, really struggled with. And then that then became my research topic. So it can be something from your personal experience. If there's someone in your family who has ADHD or ASD, and then that's something that you're interested in. It can be that, or it's something that's in your community, or something from work. It can be anything, but if you can't think of something, just go to the university's list and see their areas of interest and try to build on from that. Um, what programs did you participate in during honors for recommendation? I did my honors at UNISA, so it was fully online. So I couldn't really participate in programs. I don't know if they had any, but I wasn't aware of any. So I just decided to just focus on working and volunteering and yeah, just putting myself out there in that regard. I couldn't participate in any university program. Why did you choose educational psychology specifically? For me, I feel like I gave myself enough chance to dabble with everything. I did some counseling online. I did a bit of research work online. I was a research assistant for like almost 6 months as well. So I did put myself out there in terms of seeing what's out there and trying to get a sense of every stream that's there in terms of psychology. But I felt like I always came back to education. That's what stood out for me. And I think with my experiences, it made more sense for me to be more inclined to educational psychology. So yeah, it just felt right, I guess, also based on my experiences. And I was more interested in it. You need to think about it. Are you going to be interested in doing clinical work, neuropsych, counseling? You also just need to look at your personality. I have a very playful personality. So working with kids most of the time makes more sense for me. But if you're someone who hates being at a school, who gets overstimulated easily with like loud noises, then you need to rethink about, okay, do you want a clinical setting like a hospital, a rehabilitation center setting, or a school setting? That also then informs where you will end up working. So you also need to think about your personality and what will be more aligned with your personality. So those are things you should also consider. I have already sent my application and I'm worried that I have not submitted an attractive enough application. I'm hoping that I get picked for selection process. With that said, any information about how to prepare for selections? Okay, I think we already answered this one in terms of trying to ask people who have went there, and also when they send you an invite from the university, normally it has the activities that you're going to be doing. For example, if you're going to be doing a paper test, they will inform you in advance for you to prepare for that. So yeah, don't really worry about that and try to watch the YouTube videos that we spoke about. I think that will help you a lot. Does Masters in Educational Psychology need honors in education, or I can apply using honors in psychology? So yeah, you can apply with honors in psychology. But however, if you do have honors in education, it's a bonus for you. Or if you have PGCE, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. It is a bonus. But yeah, it's not a factor. It's not a big factor. And do I need to have experience in education? Some people had no experience in education in my class, and some people had experience in education. So it's more so how you, I don't know, how you put on the paper what you learn from your experiences. It doesn't necessarily have to be education. Like we spoke about how it can be retail, or it can be corporate, or it can be something else that's not in education. You just need to reflect on what you learned from that experience. So if you're not fortunate enough to have experience in education, it's not a train smash, honestly. Some people have no experience in education as well. Um, what a day in the life. Okay, I'm assuming that's a life. What a day in the life of an educational psychologist looks like. Okay. Okay, so we can start with being a student. Okay, I think I remember M1. So your day will look like you go for seminar classes, you have a class, you have your therapy client in the morning, or you have your therapy client in the afternoon, and then you have supervision, a lot of supervision, and then you have group work because you also have assignments in between. Some days you go to the communities that you're assigned to, some days you're working on reports online. So it differs per university. And then internship, I was interning at a school. So my day looked very different every day. So basically you'll be doing therapy with the kids at the school. Some days you'll be doing assessments. Some days you're attending meetings with parents to give them therapy feedback. Some days you're attending meetings with the teachers. Sometimes you're doing workshops for the teachers, workshops for the students. For example, now it's exam times, so you will find yourself doing study skills workshops, workshops on exam anxiety, or workshops on anything. For example, if it is I don't know, a month that focuses on a specific mental issue, you can have a workshop on that, whether it's for the teachers, parents, or learners. Some days you're doing psychoeducational assessments, some days you're doing class observations, some days you're just in your office doing admin work because you have a lot of admin work. So it differs. This year it's different because I work at a school 3 days. So I'm at a school 3 days and I'm at a private practice 2 days. So my days look very different. So yeah, it just depends on where you are. Other people go to universities, they work at universities as interns. So the days look very different. But one thing about it is your days are always just different. My days are not the same. Like I can even go in with a schedule of today I'm doing this, today I'm doing that, but things always just come up. So your days look very different every day. You never know what to expect. You can just think, okay, I'm done for the day, and then you get called downstairs. There's a learner having a panic attack, or there's a learner who's just crying. So you always need to leave room for those unexpected things that happen, especially at a school. You can't really plan because anything just happens. So yeah, it's quite difficult to like say you wake up and then you do this. Every day looks different. Some days you have conferences, you have psychology breakfast or workshops or networking conferences. So every day looks very different, honestly. But yeah, it's quite fun. It's quite fun. And then the last thing was I am a speech therapist and audiologist by profession working in a special school. I am interested in switching careers to educational psychology. I did psychology as undergrad module for 3 years. Okay. I want to know the process of applying and which courses to do to increase my chances of being admitted in a master's. So you already have 3 years in psychology modules. I would suggest that you actually also email the universities because I think that you can be credited for those 3 years undergrad psychology modules. But I would suggest you email the universities and see, because maybe they would suggest you do additional courses or something, but I'm not sure. I would suggest you email the universities directly or call them and explain your background. But yeah, it is definitely doable. You just need to call the universities and figure out what they would require from you. Would they require you to do an honors in psychology, or they can also just credit you for your speech and audiology course? You need to call the university. I'm not quite sure about the administrative part of that. And then that is the last question that we had. Let me just quickly stop sharing my slides. Um, thank you so much for the person who, oh, it's actually Papano Workshops. Yes, I see they posted the link of Dr. Tebe that I was talking about on the, yeah, so please go through his YouTube videos. They're quite helpful. So let me just quickly see if, okay, there's a lot of things on the chat box. Okay, let me just quickly go through those. I'm interested in applying at the UJ. Nosipo. Okay, if you're interested in applying at UJ, please just, I think they're closing very soon. So yeah, please just go through the application, and if you need help, try to find someone who went to UJ and go to Dr. Zebe's YouTube. I'm sure he has interviewed someone who went to UJ. Does having a background in psychological assessment strengthen one's chances of getting selected for the program? Yes, it does. If you do have experience in psychological or psychometric background, it does because you already have so much exposure in the field. But if you don't, like me, I had no idea what psychological assessments were when I went in for my training. I only found out about them during my training. However, if you do have knowledge and experience in them, I think it is something that stands out for you in terms of making you stand out from other applicants. But if you don't have, which most people don't have, don't feel discouraged about it. Like just work with what you have. But if you do have experience, it's great for you. You can just reflect on that and speak on what you've learned from it and why you want to be trained more in that skill that you already have. Sina, how was vets for you? For me, vets was amazing. When things just feel like when something just feels like it was meant to be. Because I remember when I applied for my master's, I didn't think I was gonna get in, which is quite sad. I think most people feel like that. You're gonna just apply and hope for the best, but you do feel like, oh, I'm not gonna get in. I wasn't thinking about funding. Like I didn't think about it. And then when I got in, I was then stranded because NRF had closed. I think this was around September. They had closed the applications. I was trying to apply for every funding that I could find under the sun, but I wasn't getting lucky. So when I went to vets, they had a post-grad thingy that they just gave me, a bursary that they just gave me that paid for everything, registration, everything. So for me, vets felt like it was just so aligned. It felt like it was meant to be. I didn't have to look for accommodation because I could travel from home. I had such an amazing experience. Just starting on the supervisors, you have a very supportive team behind you. You Yeah, they're very supportive in terms of academic, emotionally. They get to know you as a person to a point where if you're going through something, they can tell, and they are very supportive. If you're going through something, they can ask you, how can we support you? Do you need an extension if there's a need? So I found that the atmosphere was very supportive. And the exposure that we got at Vets, we had a clinic there downstairs, so we didn't struggle in terms of getting clients. So yeah, I had an amazing time. I feel like they really have a very supportive team, and I got a lot of exposure in terms of competency as well. I had a play therapy client, I had an adolescent, I had an adult, I had exposure in terms of assessments, community work. They also help you with internship applications. So that was also lovely. Another thing you need to look at, some universities require you to be in therapy, because the training itself is so it's very intense, and sometimes obviously as people that can evoke certain emotions or traumas or experiences. So it is advisable to be in therapy. I think for vets it was a requirement, it was compulsory. If you can't find a psychologist, I remember they gave us a list of psychologists that were willing to see us for free or a discounted rate. So yeah, I had a good time there. But I know people who also trained at UP, Vets, UJ. They also had an amazing time. So I think when the time is right for you, you will be accepted at a university that is more aligned with you, and it will also just feel like, oh, this was meant to be. So I had a good time. And then P says, if you also work with adults, in what capacity would that be in? Is it from a systems perspective that's centered around the child, or the the or are they one-on-one for said adults? Okay. So, with adults, obviously, you don't really use the systems because they can consent for themselves. So, when you're speaking about the systems, we think we're speaking more of if you're dealing with a child, you need consent. Already, the parent is involved. You need the parent to bring the child in for therapy. You need the teachers so that the teachers also know what's happening if the child needs to leave a class early. So, it almost feels like when you're working with a child, you're working with five more people because the child depends on those people. So that's where that was coming from. But with adults, yeah, you can just work more one-on-one. So you can just use a more person-centered approach or whatever approach, but you do work with adults as well, whether it's for therapy or assessments. And if they can consent for themselves, great. You don't really need parents involved. For other people, you do need parents involved, depend because, for example, you will deal with kids who have disabilities. You'll find that the person is 20, but they have disabilities. So basically the parents need to consent. So yeah, those are things that you also need to look at. That's why most of the time you're going to be working in systems, but you do see adults and you see them alone and you don't have systems or families involved. um I went to UJ finals phase last year. Yes, I think it's in Tlantla. Shared that he or she went to UJ and then someone said they would like to hear the experience, please reach out to the person. I'm not sure how. Maybe somehow in the chat box, if you're comfortable, you can just speak about how you can share the contact details. Yeah, it really helps to speak to someone who's been there. It also eases your anxiety a little bit to know what you're walking into. Can you please type the doctor's name for us so we can make sure we spell it right? Okay. Yeah, I think Papano Workshops just posted the videos. Does VETS require research proposal? I just want to be sure. When I applied, they did not require a research proposal during the application. However, when you are selected, they will ask you to think of a topic and think of who can supervise you, but it's not part of the application process. Um, Unfortunately, have work. Thank you for the session. It was truly informative. I'll go through the full recording. Oh, okay, this is Reabeti. Does anyone know schools around Joburg we can reach out to for opportunities? I don't know of any, but sometimes they don't post opportunities. I remember someone was telling me that they just walk at a school, like a walk in at a school and just speak to someone. Because most of the time they don't advertise those things. Just walk in at a school and unfortunately you have to put yourself out there. Just walk in at a school and say, hey, listen, I have a BA in psychology and I'm looking for some volunteering experience. Is there someone from the SBST that I can talk to who wants support? Like I mentioned, I was just helping with minutes of the meetings, calling parents, sitting in meetings. So you can just be like, listen, any kind of volunteer work that you guys need in the SBST, I'm more than willing to put myself there and come in for meetings and see how I can assist. So sometimes you just have to shoot your shot and just go there and see what they say. The worst thing they can say is no. And if they say no, sometimes they'll refer you to somewhere else. So yeah, you just need to put yourself somewhere else. But if people know a school that is looking for volunteers, please share on the chat box and help with Dumelo. I'm a student at UNISA and I split my honors into 2 years. This is my last year. However, I have results last year's module. I have results. I'm assuming I have results from last year's modules. I did well in all three modules except my research module. The result is a fail. They recently amended them, but I don't have access to the updated result yet. How can I best navigate that? Do I still submit my transcript? Yeah, I would suggest that you call the university. And I think that's the thing that I also sometimes you get stuck and then you don't know what to do. The next best thing you can do is call the university and ask the person who's in charge of the admissions. And most of the time they know what to do in such situations. They can either say submit your applications and like either submit another document explaining what happened, or they can say no, wait for your other three modules, but call the university and ask them, what do I do in a situation like this? Do I submit my marks and then in your transcript is going to show that you're still waiting for other marks and then that will come out in December or October? So just call the university and see what to do. I don't know what you should do in a situation like this, because when I did my honors, I did it in a year. It was like the whole year. And unfortunately I couldn't apply that year because I only got my results at the end of the year. So I would suggest that you call the universities and ask, like, what do you do in a situation like this? Tobile, if I don't have academic reference, is it a deal breaker because I am a teacher and I use my principal? No, it's not a train smash or like a deal breaker. I did my honors at UNISA and I couldn't think of anyone that I knew from the university. My third year was online because of COVID. So by default, I didn't have an academic reference. So I just used people that I worked with. Yeah, I used one member from the SBST of the school, and I think I used someone from the other volunteering thing that I did. So yeah, you do have enough references. However, if they want a particular like a lecture, not everyone has a lecture, and I think they know that. So I think it's enough. What you have is enough. Just use those. It doesn't have to be an academic one. Okay, Masiho. I was working in a workshop with NRF officers from my institution, and they said they don't offer funds to any master's programs with an internship component. How true is that? Just to double check. Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't use NRF, but I do know people. Actually, yeah, I know people who used NRF for their masters. Yeah, so I don't know if that's per institution, but I know people who did their masters a year before me. Two people used NRF, and I also know, so this is educational psychology. I know some people who did counseling who were also using NRF. So I don't know if it's depending on the institution, but I know some people who did their masters in ed who used NRF, and educational psychology has a an internship component to it. So maybe just double check if it's that specific that specific institution. But I do know people who had a internship component who were funded by NRF. Unati. I wasn't really considering applying for masters in educational psychology, but this meeting changed my mind. This is closing tomorrow. I just checked their website and they don't show what time they close. Well, I'm glad that you found this insightful and it's changed your mind. So just try to apply. Stay up the whole night if it means you stay up the whole night and just get the application in. And yeah, good luck with your applications. Re Relatilo, not being negative if I don't get into master. Okay, I think that was incomplete. Yeah. Oh, here she is. Yeah. If I don't get into masters for the next year, what can I look into for the year to help in boosting my chances into getting into masters the following year? It's not even being negative. I mean, it is the program they take 12 people or 6 people. So you kind of have to be realistic as well. So I understand where that is coming from. So I know some people go into other programs like they rather just do their academic masters or they would rather go into psychometry and they fall in love with that. So just look into like other programs that you can do in the meantime. Whether it's just also working more, getting more work experience. So yeah, just look into things like that. Did you travel from home or you stayed at rest? Because I want to travel and I'm from East End. Lastly, what time do classes start and is everyday attendance a requirement? Yeah, I was staying in Soweto, so I traveled every day. It was not that far. Yeah, traffic was hectic, but it was not that far. But I remember in my class there were people who were staying in Pretoria. We had two people who were traveling from Pretoria to Wits every day. So as long as you can find an arrangement in terms of transport, whether it's using a bus or driving or getting like away in terms of okay, you can get a taxi from one point, get off in town, connect from town to Wits. It is definitely doable. I think my whole class, no one in my class stayed at rest. We were all traveling, and yeah, some people were traveling from far. And I think that also then helped us because no one had time. Like, as soon as the class is done, it's done. If you need a group discussion, we can just do it online. It helped in that sense that everyone was understanding that everyone is to get home at a particular time. The classes don't even start that early. I think the earliest class that we had was 8 o'clock on a Friday. But besides that, it was like 9, 9:30. So they don't start early. And then latest you finish is like 5. But also, yeah, no, classes probably ended around 4:30 to 5 latest. You don't have late classes. And if you are late, it'll be because of a client, like a therapy client. But that's like it's an arrangement that you can make. For example, I preferred seeing my clients in the afternoon because I had like a kiddie in primary school. So obviously I had to wait for them to go to school. Seeing them in the morning wasn't that practical. So you also need to work around your clients. I had a client that I would see in the morning, the adult one I'd see her in the morning, and then the play therapy one I'd see her after school. I think it was like 3:30, because she had to go to school and then travel from school to vets. So you need to think about those things. So it's your time and then also working around your therapy or your assessment clients' times. Also, what is realistic? I know some people in my class would see their clients in the morning, but these are people maybe who either were studying close to it or traveling in the morning was more convenient for them. But yeah, don't worry about classes starting too early or ending too late. Yeah, we didn't really have late classes. You had no reason to be at campus after 5, unless if you were staying for your own reason. And then Relatilwe, oh yeah, we went into that. Oh, okay. This is the one that I was asking, the one that said they went to UJ's final phase. I think Sina just posted the number for Ntlantla to text on the chat box. Mabato, please share the recording. I missed most of the info due to poor connection. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. And then Papano Workshops responded and said it will be uploaded on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. So yeah, you can definitely go watch it there, and catch up on the other things that you missed out on. And I think on my side, that's the Oh, okay. We have another question. Mubrawa. Oh, Mubrawa, yeah. Sorry to ask, does educational psychology have paid internships? They do have paid internships. Yeah. So if you're gonna go to a school, yeah, the salaries range, they're different. You have NGOs, you have schools, private schools, you have universities. I know, PsychEd, OSS at UJ. and other universities. So basically, this psych ed or the psychology clinic at universities, they are also internship sites. And then you have private schools like your Curo, your Cedarwood, your Crawford, your I'm trying to think of other schools, your Nova Pioneers. Now we have Advitech colleges that are now taking EdSykes interns. You also have Ububele, you have JP So you also have NGOs. There's different sites now because I did my internship last year, but now I know that there's even more internship sites that were not there when we applied. However, if you want to do your internship at the district, I know that's not paid. Unfortunately, they don't have funding for intern at Sykes to intern at the district or at the GDE. If you want to pursue that, then you have to do it for free. And then I'm assuming you then just gain experience. But if I don't know anyone in my class who did that, but I know it's not paid. But there is a lot of internship sites and they are paid. Yeah. I hope that answers your question. And then on my side, that's the last question that I have. I'm not sure if there's any other question that I missed. If there is, you can just raise your hand or we can just call it a night.
I think we can open the floor to questions. People can unmute themselves at this point if they have more questions instead of typing.
Oh, okay.
Hi. I'm sorry. I think you might have answered this question, but I think I missed it. I actually asked about the question with that said like when you're working with adults, in what capacity is that? Like, is it with related to the child, or like is it an adult on their own or something? I think you really might have answered it, and I just missed the answer.
No, it's okay. We can go through that again. So you do see adult clients, and I think that's the biggest misconception that's out there that educational psychologists only deal with kids or you only see kids. You do see clients. I know educational psychologists who see couples for couples therapy. As long as you have
Oh,
competency in it, as long as you have someone who supervised you in it, and you feel like you have the skills and the competency, and you can prove that you have competency, you can work with adults. I see adults in private practice. Unfortunately, at the school, you are limited, obviously. I only see
yeah.
the oldest you can see is grade 12. But in private practice, you can see adults 35, 40, 60. You are not limited. As long as you have competency, you can do anything. As long as you
Oh,
have
okay.
training and competency, if you don't have competency, it's easy. You just get someone who has competency in it, get them to train you, supervise you, then you can practice in that area. I think this is where the whole chat about the scope of practice is very fluid right now, where it's like as a clean psych you can see kids, as an ed psych you can see adults. As long as you have competency and you were trained and supervised in it, you can do it.
Oh, okay. I just thought that there would probably be like conflict with the HPCSA to be like, no, your scope is educational psych, so why are you doing psychotherapy, like in, for example, private practice, like you said, couples therapy? I thought it would be like, that doesn't make sense.
No, no. So as long as you have competency and you are trained and you got supervision, if you don't feel confident in your competency, then you need to go for training, extra training, which is why we have CPDs or like
Mm,
continuous development trainings. Then you get supervision in that specific thing. For example, if you want to do couples therapy, get someone who does it, get them to supervise you and do it. But if you feel competent enough to do it, if you feel competent enough to work with an adult, you do it. But the training itself does train you to work with adults and adolescents and kids. That's not something
no.
that limits you. It's just a matter of preference. I know some people are very specific. They only want to work with kids at a certain age. Others want to work with adolescents only. Others want to work with assessments only. They don't want to do therapy. So sometimes you find that it's like individual preference.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. No, you're welcome.
Hi, Refilwe. Hello.
Hi, Nosipo. I think
Oh,
it's Nosipo, right? Is it Nosipo?
yes, yes, it's Nosipo. I have an experience of working as a teacher for like 12 years, and then I did my undergrad at 𝐿𝐴𝐻, and then I did my honors in sociology, and then I did PGCE, and then in 2023 I did like honors in psychology at UNISA. For the past I'll say 3 years, I've been trying to apply UJ. And then
Okay.
last year, I was selected at up to the last round, but I didn't get the interview session. So I don't know, because I've been trying so hard to kind of like improve, because I'm working in deep rural areas whereby when you need to access an educational psychologist, you need to travel about 200 kilometers. And again, she's private, and I'm working in a poverty-stricken community. And I feel like I'm being stuck, and I've been trying so hard, like to apply and improve for to get into a UJ, because UJ is the only one that are flexible for me since I'm working full time as a teacher. So my
Mm.
question is, if they accept you, is it compulsory for you to, when you're doing your the second year, when you're doing your internship, to be compulsory to be placed around schools which are in Joburg? Because I work in deep rural areas in the northern part of KwaZulu Natal. Is it going to be possible for me to be placed on this side, or I need to go to Joburg for an internship? I'm quite concerned about all of those things. Because I'm
Okay.
hoping that this year, yeah, for next year's application, I'm hoping, because last year it was so close. Because I was
Yeah.
in that 40, because there were 40 of us, and then the 15 was supposed to be selected for the interview. It is so unfortunately that I didn't get into, and they did explain that there were many of us, so they couldn't
Mm.
just, and the competition was too tough. Because I was under the assumption that if I got a cum laude for my honors, it's gonna be easy for me to get in. But again, it's not the case, because I've been trying for 3 years and I'm not getting in while I have a cum laude in my honors. So yeah, I don't know if you can help me in terms of upgrading myself. Yeah, and I don't know, hey, I'm just tired to being a teacher anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand the frustration. So with internships, you're not limited to a specific thing. I know some people go to KZN, some people go to Limpopo. So it really doesn't matter. You just need to find yourself a site. That's the thing about internships. You choose a site, you apply for a site that you want, and then you go there. So for example, like we spoke about the some people wanting to do it at the GDE. Unfortunately, that's not paid. So if you want to pursue something like that, you would have to go to the district where your school is and speak to them and see what they have to say. But I think that's something that can be arranged. But in terms of limitation around internships, you can go anyway as long as you speak to the people and you have an arrangement. And another thing about internship sites is it has to be accredited by the HPCSA. If it's not accredited by the HPCSA, then you need to, there's like a paperwork that you fill out. It's not a big deal. Mine was not accredited as well. But there's like a document that you need to complete and get a supervisor. So you would have to work around that if that site is not accredited, but you are not limited. And yeah, I'm sorry about the experience that you had. Unfortunately, it is quite competitive. Universities don't have enough resources and supervisors and capacity to train a lot of people. But hopefully you learned a lot from your previous experience, and now you know what to expect in selection. And you know what? When it's your time, you will definitely make it. And I hope that doesn't discourage you in terms of applying again, because yeah, you do have a lot of experience and you also have good marks. So it's just a matter of the timing being right for you. I hope that experience didn't discourage you.
Okay, no, it didn't discourage me, because like in the school setting that I work with now, I'm currently working as a learner support. So it's more like there's more like different other schools that will come to my school, they want help, because I try to network with like hospitals for an occupational therapist and a speech therapist and a psychotherapist to refer kids that are struggling, because it's very difficult sometimes when you're working in a poverty-stricken community, because the majority of the parents, they don't afford, and they tend to misdiagnose other kids. Because there is a case that we've been currently dealing with in my school. There is a learner who, I don't know if I can speak Zulu, there is a learner, Otwasayo manje, Sangoma. And
Mm.
his parents, they paid like 57,000 to some Gobela in Joburg to try and help him. And then when the learner came, I saw an ADHD case because I referred him to a psychologist in Newcastle, and then she did assess him, and then she confirmed what I saw in the kids. So for me, it's a bit overwhelming because I feel like I'm stuck. I do see problems, and sometimes I do feel like I have a solution, but I don't have the capacity and the resources to actually help the kids. Because my school is very big in such a way that I teach grade 4 English, and majority of the kids, they're having gaps, and the gaps they manifest as if they're dyslexic. So there's a lot of things that have been happening that are making me so depressed in a way, and just
Mm.
making me to just get out of the way, like get out of the teaching profession as a whole, because there's a lot of things we don't have supports, especially us who teach in deep rural areas. We don't have support. Yeah, so there's a lot. I can speak like who's
For
a woman
days.
class.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
is. Yeah, I think that's the whole thing about working around systems. You work around systems that sometimes don't really feel that supportive. And I think this is where I also
True.
mentioned context. Context is very important. I also did encounter a few cases where you have parents who feel like the child is presenting with spiritual things. And sometimes they are presenting with spiritual
Yes.
things. Then you have to be sensitive around that. How do we support a child spiritually and educationally and emotionally? Those are things that you kind of need to fight your way through as someone who's working in South Africa because of our context. And I understand how sometimes it can be frustrating, especially when you can see that this
Yeah.
seems to be an ADHD case, but the parents are saying this.
Yes.
So then it's like, how do we now all collaborate? Hence the whole thing about systems. Now you need to collaborate with the person who's the sangoma in the situation and the speech therapist or the OT who's involved. Now three people who have three different backgrounds have to find a common ground, which is what is in the best interest of the child. And I think working with kids is quite frustrating because sometimes you feel like they
Yeah.
can't do anything. So now you want to fight for them, but then you are limited as
True.
well. So it's quite frustrating working
Yeah,
around
it
systems
is.
like that. Yeah, it's quite
Yeah.
frustrating. So I understand your frustration and how then not getting selected then also frustrates you even more in a situation like
Yo,
that.
mm, it
It's a
is.
lot.
It is because yes, it's a lot because I'm like 35. I'm like counting, yo, I'm only 5 years done being 40. And I'm like, oh gosh, so manje by being stuck
No.
here.
No, don't worry about that. I know some people who do their training when they're very old. It's like it really doesn't matter. Life can start at 50, guys. It really doesn't it doesn't matter. It can. Like life can start at 50, you do your training, and then, there's like old psychologists. You must look it up. We do have a lot of old psychologists, others just qualified, and age is really not a matter. And I think when you finally get in, you will realize why you had to get in on that year in particular, in that institution in particular. Like you will feel very aligned. And it's just unfortunate that a big part of the journey almost feels like you are just walking in blindfolded. You don't know where you're going, what's gonna happen. It's quite frustrating. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really sorry about that, but please apply again.
Okay, I will. Okay,
Please
thank
apply
you.
again. You're welcome.
I will. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Nasipo. And then if we have a few more questions, you can just unmute yourself.
Okay, wait. It's one last time. Is it vet like full time, like full time? You need to stay
Yeah,
around
it is.
Joburg.
Yeah, it is unfortunately full
You
time for a year. Also I was actually thinking about that
okay?
now after you muted yourself. I'm like, have you thought of ways around maybe applying for other universities and maybe taking I know a teacher who didn't resign, but she took a leave of absence or something like that for a year.
Yeah.
Is that an option for you? Like
Yeah.
financially, is it feasible for you?
No, financially, it's not feasible for me because, I thought about that option because even at UJ, they did tell that you should explore other opportunities like at different universities. So for me, I think that's the problem. It's the financial constraints because I'm the only one working at home. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I have a lot of things. Yeah. So that's why UJ is like my only hope. Is like my only
Mm,
hope. Because with vets, yeah, I saw, but if because I got more information, because I was willing to apply at vets, but if you explaining that it's full time, no, I think I'm not gonna be able, because I even tried at UKZN, because I'm originally from Durban. So I even tried at UKZN for Howard College and even Pietermaritzburg, because it's where I did my undergrad. It was also full-time there, because they even have some post-grad certificates in counseling. Again, it's full-time. So UJ is more like the only option, and it's very competitive because the majority of us who are working, we're all rushing to apply at UJ.
Yeah, because you
So it
don't like
becomes
it's
a
not feasible
problem.
to not be working for a year. Like, yeah, I understand how the competition there is even tighter. So yeah, maybe just try to apply again and yeah, because I can understand the whole thing about finances and it not being realistic for you
Mm.
to just be a student full time. But yeah, try again at UJ, hey. Because yeah, unfortunately some universities are full time. Like full time is in you will not have capacity to go to work. Like and you can't keep taking days off the whole year. They're gonna figure out something is wrong. So yeah.
Okay, wait. If it's like a year, is it like 1 year full-time on the desk? Is it 1 year
Yeah, so
full-time
it's
on the
one
desk? So
year
the
full time.
following year for the internship. Okay,
No,
so the
you
following year for
don't.
the internship, you can go. Okay.
Yeah.
Yo, okay. I think let me just try and consider and see what I can do.
Mm.
Hey.
Yeah, because then
Yeah, I
it'll be
think I
1 year
can.
studying, and then so it'll be 1 year studying, and then the other year would be internship.
Yeah. Oh, it's gonna be 2 years.
Yeah, so it's 1 year studying, and then the other year is internship. So at least with internship, you will be getting paid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Oh, okay.
it's a lot to think about. It's a lot to consider.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot because I even checked like in terms of the fees. I feel like the course is just like the lots. You need money.
Mm.
You need money. Yeah, you need money to save up. Like you need to save up. Yeah, but I can see because I feel like at this point in time, I'm frustrated enough that I'm willing to do anything to just to get out of the whole situation. Because we as teachers, I'm gonna speak on behalf of teachers, we have a lot of like problems at schools and we're expected to cover the curriculum without taking into consideration